Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going someplace, well, chilly to say the least.
Chilly and pretty intriguing.
Yeah, the shores of Lake Superior, to be
Oh.
exact. A story that's got, well, it's got everything. Really beauty, brutality.
Family drama, you name it.
The Glen Sheen murders. Have you heard of it?
Oh, it's a classic.
It is, and we're going to deep dive into it today. So, picture this. You inherit this massive 39-room mansion. I mean, talk about a masterpiece, right?
Yeah.
Generations of family history, craftsmanship, the works.
And then, bam, that inheritance makes you a target.
It's like something out of a movie. Except this is real life.
Real life and really messed up. What grabs you about this case is that it's not your typical in-your-face kind of crime.
It simmers.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a slow burn. You've got this wealthy family, a picture-perfect estate, and then, boom, a double homicide.
Senseless.
Seemingly senseless. But when you peel back the layers, you find this tangled web of relationships, resentment, and, oh boy, the greed.
The greed, yeah. It's almost Shakespearean.
Almost. So if we're going to get to the bottom of this, we got to start with the players. Elizabeth Congdon, the matriarch, living the high life in her Duluth mansion, Glen Sheen.
High life, but not exactly flashing it around, right?
No, not at all. Elizabeth's a fascinating character. Grew up with privilege, money, the whole 9 yards, but she dedicated her life to giving back. Philanthropy, community service, that was her thing.
Shunned the spotlight, too.
Absolutely. Despite her family's name and all that, she kept it low-key, found joy in the simple stuff, gardening, bird watching.
And her daughters, Marjorie and Jennifer,
Adopted, right?
both adopted.
Yeah.
She loved those girls, gave them everything, but, well, you'll see.
I'm ready for it. And Glen Sheen itself, I mean, is practically a character in this story. This gigantic estate built by her father, Chester Congdon.
Mining magnate, self-made millionaire. Glen Sheen was more than just a house. It was a symbol.
Privilege, for sure, but also a legacy built on hard work, ambition, and a sense of duty to the community. Chester and his wife, Clara, they hammered those values into their kids, especially Elizabeth.
So how does this, this picture of family and giving back, how does it become the scene of such a horrific crime?
That's the million-dollar question. But before we get to that night, let's dig a little deeper into the family dynamics, especially Elizabeth and her daughters.
Because there's something there, right?
Oh, yeah. Night and day, these two. Jennifer, easygoing, loved people, embraced the family values.
Marjorie, different story. Introverted, prone to outbursts.
Like they were living in different worlds, even though they had the same upbringing.
Precisely. And let's not forget, they were both adopted. Elizabeth showered them with love and material things. But Marjorie always felt like she didn't belong. Always seeking attention, needing that validation.
Yeah, need for attention.
It went to some dark places.
Oh.
Stealing, lying, blaming others.
From a young age, and it only escalated as she got older. Looking back, experts diagnosed her as a sociopath. Lack of empathy, no remorse, the whole package. But Elizabeth, maybe out of motherly love, maybe guilt about the adoption, she kept making excuses for Marjorie.
Setting a dangerous pattern.
Oh, incredibly dangerous. Enabling her behavior, which, as we'll see, had disastrous consequences. And those problems, they just multiplied as Marjorie got older. Finances in turmoil, relationships built on manipulation. It's a wild ride.
So her first marriage to Dick Leroy, that's where it all starts to unravel.
Yeah, you could say that. Dick was a good guy, kind, religious, the whole bit, had no clue what he was getting into.
Felt for the act.
Hook, line, and sinker. He didn't see the mountain of debt she was hiding, the lies, the manipulation. Imagine his surprise when the creditor started calling, hounding him about purchases he knew nothing about.
So not only was she irresponsible, but she was willing to throw anyone under the bus to save herself.
Including her own mother. She actually accused Elizabeth of mishandling her money. Poor Dick. He was stuck in the middle, trying to make sense of the chaos, raise their kids. They had 7, by the way.
7. Talk about pressure.
Unimaginable. And he tried everything. Counseling, setting boundaries, you name it. But he couldn't control her spending or her emotional outbursts. She'd threaten suicide, anything to get her way.
Sounds exhausting.
It was. Even their therapist warned Dick to protect himself, said Marjorie could wipe him out. Talk about a chilling prediction.
And that's what eventually led to the divorce.
It was the final straw. 1970, they split. But Marjorie, being Marjorie, she didn't just let go. She made his life hell. Rumors, using the kids against him, maybe even vandalized his car.
Couldn't stand the thought of him moving on.
Nope. And that vindictive streak, that inability to let go, well, it becomes a defining characteristic in her next relationship, which, as you know, leads to tragedy. So Marjorie, after the divorce from Dick, It really gets interesting here. It's like all those manipulative tendencies, they just ramp up. Not just about the money anymore.
Control.
Control, you got it. And her actions, man, they get bolder. Like way bolder. Remember that time she got her 80-year-old mother to co-sign a loan?
Wait, how much was it again?
$345,000.
No way. Even today, that's a lot of money.
Back then, astronomical.
Yeah.
And of course, Marjorie defaults on the payments. Then she turns around and says Elizabeth wasn't mentally fit to sign in the first place.
Oh, come on. That's just low.
Talk about kicking someone while they're down.
Right.
But that's Marjorie for you. No regard for anyone, not even her own mother.
And then there's that whole incident where Elizabeth got sick, right, after one of Marjorie's visits.
Ah, yes, the marmalade incident. So Elizabeth had this homemade marmalade she loved, right? And wouldn't you know it, Marjorie was seen feeding it to her right before Elizabeth got sick.
And they found, what, tranquilizers?
Tranquilizers in the marmalade.
Right.
The staff at Glensheen, they were already suspicious of Marjorie, but this just confirmed it. From then on, it was eyes on Marjorie every time she was around Elizabeth.
They were straight up worried about her safety. It's like something out of, one of those old suspense movies.
Totally. Picture-perfect setting, beautiful estate, but underneath it all, there's this dark current, this feeling that something's not right.
And we haven't even talked about the fires yet. Didn't Marjorie have, like, a string of bad luck with those?
Oh, yeah. Fires seemed to follow her wherever she went. Her place on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border burned to the ground. Years later, another fire, another house, always under mysterious circumstances.
You gotta wonder, right? Just bad luck or something more?
Makes you think. And then, of course, you have the threats against Tom Welch, the guy managing Marjorie's trust fund.
She was not happy with him.
Understatement. People overheard her saying she was going to take care of that bastard, even allegedly made calls to hire a hitman. Things were getting out of control.
Desperation, I
Yeah.
guess. She was spiraling. And that's when Roger Caldwell enters the picture.
Ah, Roger. Bit of a dreamer. Prone to get-rich-quick schemes. Perfect target for Marjorie.
She saw weakness and she pounced.
Exactly. Took control of the relationship, what he wore, who they hung out with, the whole 9 yards.
Just like with Vic.
History repeats itself. Overspending, debt piling up, the FBI's knocking on the door, creditors breathing down their necks. It's a mess.
But she's still fixated on this horse ranch, right? Convinced the inheritance is going to fix everything.
Totally delusional. She even forged a letter from a doctor saying her son needed to live on a ranch for his health. Tried to use it to get the inheritance early.
Using her own kid, that's just... I don't even know what to say.
New levels of low. But of course, it backfires. So they're stuck, right? Money's gone, options are limited. What do?
Head back to Duluth. Not the best idea.
Not at all. And as luck would have it, Elizabeth's health is declining, needs round-the-clock care.
The perfect opportunity. In Marjorie's mind, anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And remember, the nurses at Glensheen, they're not stupid. They'd seen Marjorie's act before. They knew she was trouble.
So there's this tension, this unease in the house. And then, June 26, 1977. Velma Pietila, one of Elizabeth's nurses, she agrees to cover the overnight shift.
Even though her husband was worried.
Bad feeling, maybe?
Maybe. The next morning, another nurse, Mildred Garvu, shows up to relieve Velma. And, well, let's just say she walked into a nightmare.
They found Velma.
Velma was dead, bludgeoned to death with a candlestick.
Oh, my.
It gets worse. Mildred, she's terrified, right? Runs to Elizabeth's room, and it's ransacked. Elizabeth's in bed, suffocated with pillows. Gone.
Brutal.
Absolutely brutal. At first, it looks like a robbery, right? Jewelry's missing, basement windows broken, car's gone. But the cops, they start digging, and things aren't adding up.
And that's when the finger starts pointing at Marjorie and Roger.
Bingo. Suddenly, they're spending money like it's water. Roger's got these unexplained injuries that match up with Elizabeth fighting back, and neither of them will take a polygraph.
Red flag, red flag,
Yeah.
red flag.
Right. And then the cops, they search their hotel room, their house, and boom, they find it. The receipt for a garment bag, bought the day of the murders. A stolen coin, mailed from Duluth. And the kicker.
Don't tell me.
A container full of Elizabeth's missing jewelry hidden in their house. Game over.
Busted.
Roger's arrested immediately, charged with the murders. Marjorie, even though she wasn't there that night, she's smack dab in the middle of it all. And this is where her manipulation skills go into overdrive. While Roger's on trial, she comes up with this crazy story, claims she was attacked by a cop, threatened to keep quiet.
Classic deflection.
Yeah.
Trying to muddy the waters, create doubt.
Exactly. But this time, it wasn't going to fly.
So much is happening. Roger's on trial. Marjorie's spinning this wild story. What happens next?
Well, Roger's trial, it was a spectacle, all this dramatic testimony back and forth, and really two completely different narratives. The prosecution, though, they built a strong case. I mean, they had mountains of evidence, all those financial records showing just how desperate Roger and Marjorie were for cash. And then the will.
The will that Marjorie wrote.
Yeah, just days before the murders. Guess who the sole heir is?
Roger.
Roger. That will was a smoking gun. Suddenly, the motive's clear, and Marjorie's looking like the mastermind, promising Roger all this money if he takes care of her problem.
But didn't Roger's lawyers try to fight back?
Oh, absolutely. They tried to pin it all on Marjorie, saying Roger was just, a pawn in her game. He was smitten with her, desperate for a taste of that wealth, and she took advantage.
So which story did the jury believe?
After weeks of all this, the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
Wow.
Roger was devastated. He kept saying they were wrong, even as they read the verdict. Can you imagine?
Sitting there, knowing your life is about to change forever, hoping they'll see it your way, and then...
And then, nothing. But hold on, there's a twist. Roger's conviction, it gets overturned on appeal. Something about the fingerprints, they didn't match up. So he's facing another trial, but he ends up taking a plea deal.
Plea deal. So he admitted to something.
Admitted to lesser charges, yeah. In exchange, he got time served, he walked free, but after all those years locked up and knowing he got mixed up with Marjorie...
A bittersweet victory, I guess.
You could say that. Later on, Roger even said he felt used by Marjorie, manipulated from day one. It's sad, really, how much damage she caused. But what about Marjorie? She couldn't just disappear, right?
Exactly. What happened to her?
Oh, she had her day in court, all right. With Roger out of the picture, it was her turn, charged with aiding and abetting the murders. The prosecution laid it all out. The money problems, her history of manipulation, and that statement she made about her mother's death being the only way out of debt. They had her cornered.
So they finally got her.
Not so fast.
Yeah.
Marjorie, being Marjorie, she pulls another rabbit out of her hat. Her lawyers, they go for the doubt strategy, suggesting maybe other family members were involved, even accusing the prosecution of planting evidence. They really played on the jury's emotions, that whole rich family angle.
And they bought it.
Hook, line, and sinker. The jury deliberated for one day, and boom, not guilty on all charges. Just like that, she walked.
How is that possible? All that evidence.
She was just that good, manipulating people, casting doubt, turning on the chart. It's unbelievable, right? But believe it or not, that wasn't the end of Marjorie's story. This acquittal was just the start of a whole new chapter. And it gets even weirder.
Weirder than this.
Oh, yeah. Get this. 5 of her own kids, they sued to disinherit her. They were convinced she did it. That's how bad the trust was broken.
Her own children. That says it all. And didn't something happen to one of her friends?
Yeah. A close friend of hers fell into a coma, died not long after, and guess who visited her right before?
Marjorie.
Marjorie. And then, to make things even creepier, she starts dating the woman's husband, and they end up getting married. The whole pattern just repeats itself. Chaos, tragedy, then she swoops in.
It's almost like she created her own reality, a reality where the rules don't apply.
And let's not forget the fires. Another one, this time at a house she shared with her new husband. She gets convicted of arson, insurance fraud, the whole 9 yards.
So she finally went to prison.
She did. But even behind bars, she couldn't help herself. She convinced a judge to let her out for a day, to handle some personal stuff. The very next day, her husband turns up dead.
You can't make this stuff up.
Nope. Officially, they said it could have been suicide, but come on, the timing is just too suspicious.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Marjorie spent the rest of her life in and out of trouble, petty theft, fraud, but she never really faced justice for what happened at Glensheen. It's a haunting case, you know? It shows you that sometimes, even with all the evidence in the world, the truth can stay hidden.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Right.
About human nature, about greed, about how far someone will go to get what they want. This whole story, it stays with you.
It does, and it leaves us with a lot of questions. How do we spot manipulative behavior in our own lives? How can we help those struggling with mental illness while still holding them accountable? Tough questions.
Really tough. Well, that's our deep dive into the Glensheen murders. A chilling story of family secrets, greed, and manipulation. If you're interested in learning more, there are tons of books, documentaries out there. You can even visit Glensheen itself. It's a museum now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, but it definitely has a dark history. As you learn more, think about what this case tells us about ourselves, about our families, about the choices we make. Because sometimes the things we value most, they come at a terrible price.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.